Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, June 27th, 2022. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things this week?
Very good, thank you, Graham.
So I'm back in Paris after that week over in the U.S., and it was a really fun week to be back. Clear Admit threw a big party, which I know when we recorded the last episode of the podcast, I was at that conference, but we hadn't had the Clear Admit party yet. So Clear Admit had a big party. It was a lot of fun, just hanging out with all the schools and our colleagues from the industry. So
nice.
It was a good time. What's going on your end, and what do we need to be thinking about on the admissions front?
I mean, again, we're pretty much focused almost fully now to the upcoming season in terms of more deadlines being announced, essay topics being announced, and so forth. Quite little activity on the wait list. So we are in those sort of summer doldrums, as it were. And what I mean by that is there still will be a little bit of activity. Schools will still be tweaking, and oftentimes what will happen is when folks show up on campus, a school might realise there's one or two folks missing.
Yeah,
maybe go to the wait list then. So there will be still just a little bit of activity left from this season, but we are pretty much fully on board for next season now, Graham.
Yeah, and it's funny, I did, one of the questions that I asked admissions directors as I ran into them at the conference last week was, how are you feeling about your class? Do you think are you able to relax now? Because for an admissions director, it's really stressful at this time of year because they feel like they've admitted the class. They know who's going to show up, but they don't exactly, because there's always a few people who start to bail, or, a peer school goes to their wait list and things start to shift. The ground moves underneath their feet, so, and everyone was saying, I feel like I'm close, but I'm not fully relaxed yet. I'm there, everyone's kind of afraid that it'll just take, maybe Harvard goes to their list and there's this sort of trickle down impact that happens, but we'll see. I definitely, we're getting later, as you say, and there has been less movement on ApplyWire with respect to wait lists. So I think we're getting close, but we shall see.
Yeah.
So as we've been doing the last couple of weeks, I'm going to ask you some questions from our Real Humans series. Like whenever I have an admissions director on and we do a Real Humans kind of podcast, we have these fun lightning round questions, and we've been going back and forth. So I'm going to have 5 questions for you this week, and we'll see if what your answers are. Some of them are easy, Alex, but some of them, when I was kind of reading them, I was like, oh, this isn't so easy to think about. So anyway, the first one's an easy one. I think I know the answer, and it is beach or mountains.
Well, there are no mountains in Cornwall, Graham. There are lots of rugged beaches, but I would say beaches and cliff tops.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Because you don't. And what's funny is you're not like a big swimmer, are you? So maybe. No. But you like being near the water. So it's
walking on the beach and walking along the cliff paths, fantastic.
Yeah, it's something I really hope to do someday, because that area of England is supposed to be the best for that sort of thing. So, okay. So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Early morning person.
Yeah. I know this because you used to tell me that after Seinfeld, you would go to bed back when it was on regular TV in America. All right. What is a guilty pleasure that you have?
You know what? You sent me these questions earlier, and I never even thought how to answer this one, because there's not really a pleasure that I have that I don't share with others, right? So you could say guilty pleasures. I do like to have a beer or 3. So I'd say, after a hard day, that first sup of beer is very, very, very nice.
Okay, good. What about a happy place, somewhere that you just really enjoy going, or place that you go to retreat?
Yeah, probably walking my dog.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does she get a walk several times a day, or just morning and night, or is
twice
she allowed
a day.
out?
Yeah.
Okay.
First thing, not first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning. Oddly enough, I check ApplyWire.
Right.
Decision Wire and LiveWire, answer any of those questions and that kind of stuff. Do a little bit more work, so maybe an hour of work.
Yeah.
And then go on my first walk. It's fantastic.
Excellent. I remember a conversation we had many moons ago where you told me that you liked to have a kind of fluid mix of work and kind of life. So you talked about how the internet was making that possible. This idea that you could wake up, do a little bit of work on your computer, go out for a walk, come back, and that, life doesn't have to be like, I clock in at this time and clock out at that time. I don't know
Exactly.
if you remember that conversation.
I
But
don't, but I sound very smart. If we had that conversation several years ago, that was quite insightful, I think.
I think it was inspired by a book you had read, something about, future of like work or something. But anyway,
Yeah,
I'll think of what it was, which book it was.
I'm definitely living it.
All right. What has been, and this was the one that I just was like, what has been your proudest moment?
Yeah, this is a difficult one. Not that I've had too many proud moments, but I would say the challenge of writing a fiction book
Hmm.
where you're essentially creating your own world. Yeah, when that was published by me,
Yeah.
self-published, yeah, I was pretty proud of that piece of work.
I have to admit, when I was reading that book, I was thinking about there's so many different, you've all the different characters and their own kind of backstories, and then just the
Yeah,
way that you have to thread it together. It's almost like a math equation to set it up.
yeah.
Like, I don't know how people, yeah, you must have had to map it all out and then you start writing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I took some classes on how to write fiction
Hmm.
because I've done a lot of writing, but it's just been factual, whether it was working for a newspaper
Yeah.
or whatever it is. It's always been factual. So, yeah, it was a really interesting challenge, but a lot of fun too.
Excellent. All right. So I guess next week you're going to ask me these same questions. So I have a little bit of a head start. I'll start thinking about them, and you can ask me these questions next week. In the meantime, over on the Clear Admit website, we did One Real Humans alumni piece, and I think we must be nearing the end of that series because we typically do it in the spring. So I think we're wrapping that up very soon. It was a gentleman named Matthew who went to INSEAD and graduated in 21. He is now working as a consultant at Bain. Originally, he's from Houston, so it's interesting. He kind of ended up at INSEAD over in Europe and Singapore. He went to Columbia for undergrad and studied political science, and then he worked in like corporate intelligence and investigations, which I've never heard that like as a field, but he must have been some kind of special role, and that's what he did, and then went off to INSEAD and now is at Bain. I did want to read one little quote from him. He said, "Some of the best advice I got before my MBA was to prioritize because you can't do everything. But I actually think that's only half of the challenge. Not only do you have to pick what really matters, but you also have to leave some of your experience to chance and enjoy the unexpected joys and learnings that come with them." He says, "For me, prioritizing meant getting a job in consulting, building friendships, and getting broad exposure across areas of potential future career interests like venture capital, social enterprise, and organizational behavior. But the random, seemingly insignificant decisions to make Thanksgiving dinner for my non-American housemates or to go hiking in the wetlands in Singapore are really what made the MBA a special time." So I thought that was a nice summary of like that sort of yin and yang to the experience.
What do we call that? The Pareto principle?
Oh, I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule, right? Now I'm just showing off.
yeah, but no, you're right. It's fascinating though because he knew what he wanted, but it was some of these little things that were unexpected
Yeah.
that really made a big difference for him. So
Yeah, I mean, the prioritization is critical.
yeah,
And it just goes back to something we've always talked about, Graham, and the idea of making sure your goals are well set before you start the MBA so that you can make the most of the experience. But I do like this tweak that this person's taken to the idea of, prioritize, but leave a little bit of room to do some of these sort of random acts
yeah.
that could be the most memorable experiences of the entire experience.
Yeah, totally. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to sort of share from the website this week. And obviously, if anyone is interested in any given field, whether it's tech or finance or consulting or healthcare, I mean, there are just a wealth of these types of profiles. And I only read one little quote from this guy, Matthew, who's, off at Bain now, but he literally he gives all kinds of advice on the recruiting process at Bain and, just his experience at INSEAD. And so they're really interesting to read. So I encourage people to head over and read those. The other thing, Alex, that I wanted to mention before we get into our three candidates is, as I've been mentioning for the last probably month or so, we have a whole series of events coming up in July. There are essay workshops, and ClearAdmit's become a little bit famous for these because we've been doing them for a couple of years now. And all that we do is we sit down with a group of schools and I MC these things, and I sort of pick the brains of the admissions directors who join us to kind of really unpack Why are they asking these essay questions? What are they looking for? What works, what doesn't? All that good stuff. And they're a lot of fun. And we've got 4 of these events coming up in July. And the schools are, Berkeley, Chicago, Tuck, Darden, Emory, Tepper, Duke, UT Austin, LBS, INSEAD. There's one on July 27th with Columbia, MIT, NYU, Stanford, and Wharton. And then there's one at the end on August 3rd with Cornell, Ross, UCLA, Yale, UNC. So that's a long list of schools. And I read it out just because I want to make sure everyone knows that this is literally a great series. And I would argue, even if you're not applying to a given school, come along to these events. You're going to learn a lot about essay writing and why these schools ask these questions, how long they take to look at your answers, all the good stuff. So you can sign up at bit.ly/CA MBA essays, all one word, all lowercase. So please join us for those events. Alex, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fun to sit down with these schools again.
Yeah, I have a couple of quick thoughts to add.
Yeah.
One is, well, not to add, but I've heard feedback from the schools that they also love these events because it's a little bit different for them to talk directly about the essays and sort of get their, allow them to unpack them and so on and so forth. So they're a slightly different style of events, which I think works really super well. And congratulations to you and the team for taking this approach. I think it sort of differentiates the experience. Secondly, where's Harvard Business School, Graham?
I know I promised that I would talk to Chad, and I didn't. He was not at the GMAC conference, and I should just send him a note. But yeah, they're the only school that's not coming. So I need to ask them.
Which frankly is very impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty
every
amazing.
School but really Harvard needs to get up to speed here a little bit.
And it's funny, when we first started doing these, I was a little worried that because we don't really let the schools do their normal kind of info session-y stuff where they can stand up and wave their flag and say how great they are. But it's worked out really well, and I think the schools end up conveying quite a bit about their culture and just by means of the essays. So anyway, a lot of fun. Sign up for that. Alex, we haven't gotten any reviews on the podcast recently, so it'd be great if people remember to rate and review the show. But I will say, we got so much praise at GMAC, and even some of the admissions people were mentioning to me that they listened to the show. So I guess we got to be careful, kind of keep that in mind that they're tuning in maybe. But it was really nice to hear some praise for everything that we do. But there were a couple of people who said, "Oh, I listen to the podcast from time to time." So
no, that is really cool. Yeah, no doubt. Well, what we need to do, Graham, I don't know if podcasts can be submitted for awards, right? Whether there's a business related sort of thing. We need to look into that. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Then we need to up our game a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit maybe. Wow. All right. So if you don't have anything else, maybe we should dive in and talk about these candidates because there are 3 really interesting ones that you picked out this week, as always.
Yeah, let's kick on. Yeah, very good.
This is Wiretap's candidate number 1. So this candidate wants to start school in the fall of 23, and they've only got 2 schools on the target list, and those schools are Duke and Georgia Tech. They've had 2 jobs before business school. So one of them was first in a kind of corporate venture capital role with a Fortune 500 company, if memory serves. And then the other is they've been doing finance at a nonprofit. Now, after business school, they want to get into technology, they think, maybe combining that interest in tech with sort of project management experience that they've had. They've been working for about 5 years so far. GPA from undergrad is a 3.79. And they graduated from a top public university. GRE, which they've taken, is a 324. They're located in Atlanta. And they did mention that Duke is their primary target because of the school's culture, concentrations, alumni engagement, and the ability to support students not interested in consulting. It's also important to them because of the location. I believe that their significant other is also kind of has some roots in the Southeast, so they would like to land in the Southeast. Now, Alex, you had some back and forth with this candidate, so I wanted to just get your lay of the land on this one and see what you think.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, Graham, I think this is quite possibly a very strong candidate, right? They've got a 379 GPA, 5 years of work experience, which looks actually like pretty damn good experience, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just quote from their entry. It says, started working in corporate venture capital at a Fortune 500 company. We were a strategic VC, so my role was to connect startups to internal innovation teams for product development and strategic market entry. That sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I then moved to a non-profit to be a project manager. So that again sounds really interesting, that they then decided to make this type of move, seemingly to be a sort of project manager, working with a business, in this case, a non-profit. But I'm really liking this work profile. Obviously, they've got to show impact and growth, but it sounds to me like they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to get to the whys behind that transition and so on and so forth. But I really, really like that stuff. So 324 GRE, that's okay, whatever. It doesn't really stand out, but it's okay. The 379 GPA sounds quite impressive, actually. I'm just a bit, this choice of schools, Duke is outstanding, no doubt. So it's good that they've honed in on Duke, and obviously they have some geographic, not constraints but desires, right?
Yeah.
They really want to be in that sort of southeast area, both during school but certainly after school. And obviously they're making decisions in consideration of their partner. And as do many other candidates applying, so that's very good. So they're targeting two schools in that southeast region, Duke and Georgia Tech. So on the one hand, Graham, you'd be like, well, there's actually some other schools they should probably be considering. That's right there in the southeast, whether it's Keenan Flagler or Goizeta, Emery Goizeta. But frankly, to me, they should also stretch themselves, identify one or two M7s, and see where the chips fall. So maybe considering Wharton, maybe considering whatever it might be, Sloan. They want technology afterwards and so forth. Maybe Kellogg, whatever it might be. And then when they get all their results, maybe an admit or two from an M7, an admit from Duke and whatever, then make the decision. Is Duke their prime target, or do these other programs, are they now more appealing because they've learned more about them and so on and so forth? They can still get recruited back to the southeast from Kellogg or Wharton or Sloan or whatever it might be. So that would be my two penneth, or a little bit longer. I either look for more programs directly in that southeast region that they're targeting, i.e. Emory and UNC, but also stretch themselves a little bit here, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add to that. I did want to mention that they have pretty solid extracurriculars, and so they really are kind of a full package. We did talk with them, or you talked with them about, hey, maybe give it another go at the GRE. If you could boost that, you could really open up some additional doors. I think that would apply largely to those M7 type programs, but it also could impact scholarship awards and things like that. So it never hurts to roll the dice and try to get the best score that you're capable of. But my first thought, I could not agree more. When I looked at this profile, I'm like, oh, where's UNC? Where's Emory? And maybe even Darden. And I know that they mentioned that they said something about Darden where they said, I've considered it, but the program doesn't entice me as much as Duke. And I think that's fine to say. I mean, every school has its fit, but I don't know. I mean, I would encourage them to actually, well, now it's summer, but it would be good for them to see the campus. And, I mean, obviously maybe they can't wait now until school's back in session, but it would be, because everyone I know that's gone to Charlottesville and visited that school usually comes away with a really great impression. So I don't know, but in any event, there are clearly some schools out there that it just seems risky to me to only apply to two, especially given that there's a pretty big gap, if you think about rankings and reputation, between Duke and Georgia Tech. And this is not to say that Georgia Tech's not a great school as well, but I'm just saying there are a lot of schools that rank in between those two, right? And so I would encourage them to think about that. And as you say, you love to say, right, that if someone runs the table, then maybe they don't have full data on what they could have had happen in the admissions process. So, I would encourage them to add a school or two for sure.
Very good. Very good.
All right, so let's move on though and talk about Wiretap's candidate number 2. So this candidate has 7 schools on the target list, and they are also looking to start in the fall of 23. The schools of interest are Berkeley, Columbia, Harvard, MIT, Kellogg, Stanford, and Booth. So this is really kind of the M7 with Berkeley in it, and Wharton, and Wharton's not on the list, it looks like. And so in any event, so that's the list. They've been working in both. They've had 2 jobs before business school. One was kind of an oil and gas role, and the other is a CPG company that they've been working for. They have 3 years of experience in total at this point. They would love to get into consulting, ideally with McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. The numbers are pretty stellar: 750 GMAT, 3.97 GPA. They are located in the Midwest and would love to stay there, ideally landing in Chicago. I know that I have a feeling why you picked this person, Alex, because I noted that the first thing they wrote in their note was, I studied chemical engineering at a high-rated state school. And I was thinking, chemical engineer, Alex likes the chemical engineers. So this person's, pretty qualified, but they did go on to say that they're an overrepresented minority, although they are born and schooled in the U.S. So I don't know where they're from necessarily, but I'm assuming it's got to be from, maybe India or somewhere in Asia when they talk about being overrepresented. But in any event, that's kind of their situation. They talked about their extracurriculars. We can get into that as well. But what do you make of this candidacy and their strategy here? Because that list of schools is pretty darn impressive, even though their numbers are pretty great.
Yeah, I'm assuming, Graham, they're Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
So I don't know what countries specifically that is, Asia Pacific, because they do some work on as a leader for the Asian Pacific American Network.
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, so so maybe they're from maybe they're from China or Taiwan or who knows, but or I mean their parents are. Yeah,
I think we can make that assumption. Anyway, yes, this candidate is wicked smart, right? 397 GPA from a chemical engineering program with a 750 GMAT. The numbers are outstanding. And, quite frankly, I think their work experience, again, much like our first candidate, is probably stellar work experience. Obviously, again, they've got to show impact and growth. It's quite interesting that they made this move from oil and gas to CPG company in sort of logistics and supply chain. And so on and so forth. But they're currently managing 25 direct reports, so that's pretty impressive in of itself, right?
And I liked the fact that in their new role, they talk about how they have this added responsibility that they've taken on, where they're the sustainability leader and they're trying to manage like initiatives to reduce carbon, water, and waste. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition with their oil and gas work from before. So very interesting progression for this candidate.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, it's all pretty stellar, right?
Right.
So the reason why I picked this, aside from the fact that they're wicked smart and and so forth, is they actually they're debating whether to apply to a full-time program, of which they clearly should be targeting these M7 programs that they are targeting. Not sure why they've eliminated Wharton. As you know, everyone listening knows we're huge fans of Wharton and we're a bit biased, but nevertheless,
totally biased.
Why they would eliminate Wharton, but full time. These are the sorts of programs they should be targeting. Okay, so they're overrepresented minority, but as long as they're in that first round, that shouldn't be an issue. And, again, there's just so much to like here. If they execute well on their applications, that'd be great. But they're debating full-time versus part-time.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, based in the Chicago area. So I presume they're considering Kellogg and Booth as their part-time options. And their rationale for that is, part-time is going to be much less cost prohibitive, and it'll allow them to continue to work, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost like that sort of risk-reward sort of ratio, tension, right? Going part-time, and it's easiest to get in, right? Frankly, I mean, that is the case, I think, and this person acknowledged that maybe it's an easier route to get in. So that's very good. But I think again, this person doesn't necessarily need to make that decision now. They should target the full-time programs, as well as maybe put in one or two applications for their part-time. Maybe they can't do that with the Chicago schools in terms of full-time if they're applying part-time. I don't know specifically what the rules Booth and Kellogg would have for that. But maybe, if they did target the part-time with the Chicago programs, but full-time with the other M7, weigh up their options when they get options after round one. My big concern here, Graham, is if they really want to do MBB consulting, the well-trodden path to that is top-tier, full-time MBA program, of which they appear well qualified to at least be targeting. And whether they have such an easy route by going part-time whilst they're working, trying to take advantage of the recruiting resources, I think that's where there's a little bit of a hiccup in their plan.
Yeah, I think that phrase that you just used, well-trodden path. I mean, so I would argue that, people have done the math on this. When you go to a top MBA program and go work at MBB, which this person's perfectly capable of doing, it's a good return on investment, even though I recognize it's probably pretty horrifying to imagine laying out a couple $100,000 in tuition and living expenses while not working. It's a leap of faith, right? And I recognize that there's some concern there, but I would argue that to this person that, wow, if you go to business school, get your summer internship at one of the MBB, I'm hearing things like bonuses, helping to pay off loans. There's a lot going on that's positive in terms of defraying that cost and making it worthwhile to take the leap. I guess on a more personal note, I would argue that the experience of a full-time MBA is just, you can't really put a price on it. And not that people go to these programs as like a vacation or something, but it's just a different experience. And it's one that you don't ever forget. So I just would encourage this person to know that many people before them with their kind of qualifications have gone to a full-time program and excelled. So
yeah,
that's my take.
Yeah. Wish is kind of the best of luck. Just seems like they've got a lot of opportunity down the road for sure.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, well, let's move on. I want to thank them for posting. And again, apply early. They should be fine. I'm sure they'll get into some of these programs. So in any event, let's move on and talk about Wiretap's candidate number 3. So this is another ApplyWire entry, and we've got a candidate who wants to start in the fall of 23, and they've got Dartmouth, Duke, Harvard, Michigan, and MIT on their target list. They have been working in consulting, and they would like to end up in consulting, although currently they work for kind of a bigger consulting firm. They don't say which one, but I just to kind of give people an idea, I presume it's like an Accenture or a Deloitte type firm. They want to go into strategy consulting for Bain, BCG, or McKinsey, just like our prior candidate. Their GRE is a 325, GPA 3.5, and they've got 4 years of work experience. They're located in New England, and they want to stay on the East Coast when they're done with business school. They attended a large state school, and they indicate that they know that their 3.5 is somewhat pedestrian, but that they double majored in econ and a unique STEM offering, and that they also minored in Arabic. And so they're hoping they can kind of make a case to the admissions team that even though they didn't go to an elite school or, as they say, a public Ivy, that they did what they could to really challenge themselves while they were in school. They also mentioned some of their grades were due to, they had a bad semester where they were sick. So they had some kind of health issues that they were grappling with. In any event, then went into the workforce. They've done a lot of interesting work, and their extracurriculars are pretty stellar. So, I feel like when I look at this candidacy and see 325, gunning for the top schools, and I think they're, kind of overrepresented as well. They're certainly not a URM. You kind of get nervous. But what's your take on this candidacy?
Yeah, I would agree. On the surface, 325, 4 years of experience does seem a little. For us normal people, that's outstanding. But for the folks targeting these top schools, it is somewhat pedestrian. But I do like the idea, or at least recognize, not all candidates at top MBA programs went to the best Ivies and the best schools and so on and so forth. So the key is, wherever you went, did you make the most of that opportunity? And this person has recognized that, and that's sort of how they're trying to position themselves in terms of, their academic experience and so on and so forth. So double majoring, taking a minor in Arabic, getting heavily involved, etc. If they say there was a semester where they were extremely sick, if there is a noticeable drop of GPA for that one semester, then they can use the optional essay to provide that additional context.
Yep.
So they should do that. They've got a 325 GRE, Graham. They said they reckon they could improve that on either side by a point or two. So if they turn that around to a 328, 329 GRE, that might actually make an impact for this candidate. So I would certainly explore that while still trying to hit the first rounds, because they note that they're an overrepresented minority or whatever, ORM. So, their work experience does sound fascinating. In terms of, I'm not going to call it directly just urban planning, but it sounds like they're doing really interesting things with sort of technology in cities and so on and so forth. I mean, I read stories about this stuff. It sounds very, very impressive. How do we design cities for the future is sort of that sort of work, it seems, that they're doing for efficiency and all the data that we can get now, and so on and so forth. And as you correctly noted, they sit on 2 boards. Their extracurriculars are also super strong. So if this person's coming across as really interesting work experience that's really sort of kind of on the cutting edge of stuff that's cool, right? I mean, it's just topical. It's very, very interesting. Combines that with strong extracurriculars. If they slightly improve that GRE, get everything in the first round, I think we're talking a very strong, a reasonably strong candidate. Certainly targeting M7 programs should be within their reach. And they have a mix of M7 and top 16, which I think is the right approach. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to like here, Graham, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that I mentioned to you before we came on air was that in their comments about their own profile, they seem to have a really high level of self-awareness in terms of where they fall in the pool. And I think that's kind of a good, I just felt like this person's got a good head on their shoulders and knows where they stand and what they might need to do to stand out in the pool. And I will say, I thought it was pretty fascinating to see that they work on this small team focusing on cities, transportation, and urban mobility. Yeah, what do cities look like in the future? I know for you would say, well, there needs to be a pub on each corner. Yeah. But I think it does sound like interesting work, and they have a good set of goals. And so I feel like I don't have much advice for them other than stay the course, apply to these schools, ideally apply in the first round, and just know that they're going to need to use that optional essay to explain probably the challenging kind of major or set of majors that they assembled for themselves, as well as that one semester where they faced some health issues and lowered their overall GPA as a result. So I think they're fine. And I feel like I wouldn't do any, the GRE is probably okay, right? I mean, it's 325. It's certainly, at the average for these top schools, at least the ones on their list. I mean, Harvard might be a bit higher, but...
The GRE is fine, Graham. It just doesn't stand out, right? So at this juncture, check mark on the GRE, but there's nothing about that GRE that's really helping them.
Right, it doesn't, that's correct.
With these programs, right? So, but if they came back with a 329 or something like that, be like, well, certainly for the top 16 type program, then we're talking, that helps.
It starts to stand out.
Elevate.
Yeah.
And also with a bit of a pedestrian GPA, having a GRE that's sort of above average is definitely going to be noted.
Right. Right, because it helps swing things back the
Yeah.
other way. Yeah. So some food for thought there. Otherwise, I just wanted to thank them for sharing their profile. And I'd like to say that they know a lot about the admissions process because they've read the book you wrote or read our, or listen to the show regularly. But I don't know that for a fact. Maybe they're just, we'll see. But
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully they're tuning in and get some advice here. Alex, I appreciate you picking these out as always. I just feel like week in and week out, we're kind of tackling all the various permutations of candidacies that could be out there and the challenges that people face. So that's why we do it. So appreciate it, Alex.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, to anyone listening, please post your profile on ApplyWire, and then we can talk about it on this podcast.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll do it all again in 1 week's time. Alex, thanks for your work on this, and I'll see you next week for this.
Very good. Thanks, Graham. Stay safe, everyone.